My stepfather announced, "This house belongs to me and my son now. You're not welcome here anymore." So I reminded him who actually owned it by showing him the deed Mom left me. His face was priceless. I'm Tessa, 27 years old, female, and I can still feel the ghost of my mother's hands in the lemon oil on the banister. The house smells like the life we had before everything bent sideways. Polish, basil from the little kitchen herb pots, old library books that never got sold because Mom swore pages needed a home like people do. Mom is Elaine, 55 years old, female. Was, I guess. I keep forgetting to swap the verb. She married Ron, 52 years old, male, 2 years ago when the chemo was doing that thing where it pretends to be mercy. And then there's Brady, 18 years old, male, Ron's son, who looks at me the way a stray dog looks at a closed door, hungry and already resentful. I used to joke that our house was a stubborn ship, creaks, a map of nail heads in the stair treads, nothing level but everything true. Now it's a raft in a storm and I'm counting splinters like prayer beads. Ron is in the living room, dropping boxes like he wants the floor to bruise. He's got that loud sigh he uses when he wants people to see how put upon he is. The box labeled "Memories Do Not Stack" goes down hard, and the frame on top skates off, smacks the floor, spiderwebs. It's a photo of me and Mom, graduation caps askew, her lip gloss print on my cheek. His whoops is a shrug with sound. "Maybe don't put the fragile ones at the top," he says, like he's giving me a lesson I begged for. "That's the box you grabbed, Ron." My mouth tastes like pennies. Brady scrolls on his phone, thumbs fast, pretending not to grin. The house has these little altars Mom made without meaning to. The ceramic bowl for keys by the door, the notch from when she moved the couch in herself and laughed for 10 minutes about industrial-strength independence, a blue binder tucked between cookbooks labeled "House." I've seen it 100 times, always meaning to ask what she kept in there. Last night I pulled it out and sat on the kitchen floor, cross-legged, the tile cold through my leggings. Papers in her careful, looping handwriting. Receipts, warranties, letters. I couldn't finish. The grief grabbed my airflow with two hands, and I laid my face against the cool tile until my heartbeat stopped arguing with the room. "You know I'm only here because Mom asked me to keep things running while the estate clears," I remind him, softer than I feel. "This place, it's not a dorm. It's not your storage unit." He turns, eyes shiny in that way he uses to make his anger look like sorrow. "We're all grieving," he says. He talks about grief like it's a card he can play and then leave face up forever. And I shouldn't have to justify being in my wife's house. My jaw clicks. "Your wife's house," I echo, and the word "wife" lands like a glass bead in a blender. Brady drops his backpack on the couch Mom loved, the one with the crocheted blanket still draped over the back. He kicks his shoes off without untying them, sand flicking onto the rug. "Where's the Xbox?" he asks the room, like I'm furniture that answers. "Garage," I say. "And shoes off the rug, please." He smirks, presses the heel harder into the wool, grinding. The sound is a whisper only I can hear. Something inside me folds its arms. Later, in the kitchen, Ron opens a cabinet and freezes, his back rigid. "We're not keeping this," he says, pulling down Mom's wedding photo with him. Shotgun daisies, small smile, light caught in her hair. The frame knocks the open cabinet door. The photo floats out, slaps the counter, and slides to the floor like a body. Another crack lines up with the first one from my graduation picture. I can feel my face get hot, cold, hot. "You could be careful," I say. It slips out. It lands like a dare. He laughs without teeth. "You could be grateful," he says. "I'm the one who kept her going." That's when I understand the way he has always spoken in past tense about future things. The way he arrived with 2 sets of spare keys and a locksmith's number in his phone favorites. The way Brady called the guest room my room within 20 minutes, like the walls would redraw themselves if he wished hard enough. I put both pictures back on the counter, line the cracked edges up straight, like lining bones before a cast. "We'll fix these," I whisper, and I don't know if I mean the frames or us, or me, or the house. The blue binder's spine stares at me from the corner like a secret keeping itself. When the kettle clicks off, the quiet after is a cliff. Ron taps the counter with one finger, marking time only he can hear. Tomorrow, he says, we need to have a talk about what happens next. He is polite the way a storm siren is polite. I nod, because shaking my head would make something break too early. I wash 2 mugs, put one back in the cupboard, and keep one in my hand, hot enough to sting. I tell myself I am not going to move out of my own mother's kitchen. I tell myself the house remembers who sings to it. And then I watch Ron take Mom's cup, the yellow one with the chipped handle, and pour his coffee into it like a ceremony he's determined to rewrite. I barely slept that night after his little speech about how his son and him owned this place now. The audacity of that man, Craig, still had me shaking. I kept hearing my mom's voice in the back of my head, the way she used to reassure me, "This house will always be yours someday, Alex. I worked too damn hard for it." She left it to me for a reason. And now this guy, who married her barely 3 years before she died, was standing in my kitchen telling me to pack my bags. Craig wasn't always this unhinged. At the funeral, he acted like a grieving widower, hugging me, crying into my shoulder, saying he'd look after the house and keep Mom's memory alive. But the cracks showed fast. By the 6-month mark, his true side kicked in. Loud, entitled, bitter. He started remodeling little things without asking. Ripped out Mom's rose bushes, trashed her old record player, replaced photos of us with framed shots of him and his son, Brandon. Brandon's 19. Lazy as hell, smokes weed all day, never worked a real job. Craig treated him like some prince who deserved the world. The moment Mom's will settled and I moved back in to help keep the place up, it was like I'd walked into enemy territory. Brandon hated me instantly. He'd leave his dirty laundry on the kitchen table just to piss me off, take my car without asking, even brought random friends into the house to party in the living room that used to be Mom's reading space. The breaking point came when I found Brandon in my mom's bedroom, digging through her jewelry box. I lost it. Grabbed the box out of his hands and told him if he touched her things again, I'd throw him out myself. He laughed in my face and said, "Dad already said it's ours now. Don't like it? Move out." That same night, Craig cornered me in the kitchen. He reeked of whiskey, slammed his hand against the fridge and snarled, "I've had enough. You're dead weight. This house belongs to me and my boy. You're not welcome here anymore." I wanted to scream back, to tell him right then and there that the deed in my desk drawer had my name, not his. But something in me wanted to wait. I wanted him to keep digging his own grave, to let him think he had all the power. The next morning, it escalated again. Craig had already changed the locks on the garage without telling me. Brandon had parked his car across the driveway so I couldn't leave for work. And taped to my bedroom door was a note in Craig's handwriting. 2 weeks. Be gone. My hands shook as I peeled it off. Rage boiled in my chest, but beneath it was a cold, steady resolve. Craig thought I was weak, thought I had nowhere else to go. He had no idea what was coming. Don't forget to subscribe. The 2-week deadline was a joke, but Craig wasn't bluffing. By the 3rd day, I came home from work to find half my bedroom furniture dragged into the yard. My mattress leaned against the mailbox like some public eviction notice. Brandon and his friends were on the porch, drinking beer and laughing like it was entertainment. "Guess you're moving out early," Brandon smirked. He'd taken one of my old hoodies and was wearing it, sleeves cut off like it was his. I stormed up the porch steps. "Touch my stuff again and I'll call the cops." Craig came out then, red-faced, waving a half-empty bottle of Jack like a scepter. "Call whoever you want. They'll back me. I'm the man of this house now." He jabbed the bottle toward me so close I could smell the sour burn. "You're just a guest, a leech, and guests don't get to stay forever." That word, guest, hit harder than I expected. My throat went tight, but my hands curled into fists. "This is my home," I said through my teeth. Craig laughed, loud and ugly, and hurled the bottle into the yard. Glass exploded across the grass. "Then why are my name and my son here, huh? Your mom wanted us here. You're just clinging because you got nothing else." Before I could answer, Brandon shoved me hard in the shoulder. Not playful, not accidental, deliberate. "Get out, loser. Dad says you're done." I shoved him back, harder, and he stumbled into the porch railing. For a split second, I thought he might actually fall over it. He caught himself and roared, red-faced. That's when one of the neighbors across the street, Mrs. Gomez, shouted, "Do I need to call the police?" She had her phone out, already recording. Craig's face twisted. "This is family business," he yelled at her. But I could see him calculating. He didn't want cops here, not yet. "Yeah, family business," I shot back, stepping down from the porch. "And I'll let them see exactly whose name is on the deed if you want to push this." That shut him up for half a beat. Then his eyes narrowed. Mean. He wasn't dumb. He knew what I meant. The rest of the night, I stayed locked in my room, listening. They stomped around the house like they owned every square inch. At one point, Brandon blasted music so loud the walls shook. Later, I smelled smoke. They'd lit a bonfire in the backyard and were burning some of Mom's old boxes I'd stored in the garage. I went out and saw flames chewing through her cookbooks, her letters, even an old quilt she'd made in college. I froze. My fists were shaking so hard I thought I'd break my own knuckles. Brandon tossed another box in, grinning at me across the firelight. "Oops, guess we're decluttering." I pulled my phone out and filmed everything. His smirk faltered when he saw the red recording light. "What the hell are you doing?" "Collecting evidence," I said flatly. Craig stormed over, grabbed Brandon's shoulder and hissed, "Inside, now." He wasn't worried about me anymore. He was worried about what I had. That night, I pulled the deed out from Mom's blue binder and laid it on the desk. My name, in black and white, stared back at me. For the first time, I felt calm. They thought they were kings of the castle, but the ground under their feet wasn't theirs at all. I decided then. I wasn't going to wait 2 weeks. The next time Craig puffed his chest and called this his house, I was going to end it. 3 days later, Craig made his move. I came home from work to find the locks on the front door changed again. This time, he'd actually stacked Brandon's weight bench across the entry like some twisted barricade. A neon orange eviction notice, clearly printed off the internet, was taped to the door. "Notice to vacate." I ripped it down and shoved my shoulder into the door until the frame splintered and I stumbled inside. Craig was waiting in the living room with his arms folded. Brandon slouched on the couch like some smug bouncer. "You're trespassing now," Craig barked. "This house belongs to me and my son. You have until tonight to leave or I'm calling the sheriff." I laughed. Actually laughed. The sound came out sharper than I expected. "Call them," I said. "Please. I'd love to have witnesses for this." Craig's eyes flickered. He didn't expect me to push back. "Don't test me, girl. I've been more patient than anyone would be. You freeload off my generosity, disrespect me in my own house, and you think you get to stay? Not happening." Before I could answer, headlights cut across the window. Mrs. Gomez from across the street had really called the cops this time. 2 deputies walked up the porch with flashlights, knocked, and stepped inside after Craig let them in. "What's going on here?" one asked, already eyeing the broken doorframe and the tension in the room. Craig puffed up his chest like a toad. "Officers, thank God you're here. She won't leave. This is my property, and I want her removed immediately." Brandon chimed in, grinning. "She's been squatting. Mom's dead, and she's just clinging on. Kick her out already." The deputy turned to me. "Ma'am, do you live here?" I didn't even flinch. Walked straight to the desk in the corner, pulled out the blue binder, and laid the deed flat on the coffee table. "I don't just live here. I own this house. My mom left it to me. My name is on the deed." The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Craig's face went slack, then twisted. Brandon sat forward, jaw unhinged like he couldn't believe what he was seeing. The deputy leaned down, scanned the paper, and nodded. "Looks legitimate. If your name is on this, you're the legal owner." "Sir," he looked at Craig, "you don't have any rights here unless she allows it." Craig's face turned the color of raw meat. "She's lying. That's a fake. Elaine told me this house was ours." The other deputy cut him off. "Then you'll need to take it up in civil court. But until then, she's the owner. If she says you're trespassing, we'll have to ask you to leave." I looked right at Craig. My hands were steady now. "Pack your things. You and your son are done here." Craig's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping on dry land. For once, he had no script. Brandon muttered something under his breath, but neither of them moved. The deputies stayed until Craig stomped upstairs, slamming doors so hard the walls rattled. I stood there in the wreck of my mother's living room, heart pounding, but I felt taller than I had in weeks. His face, that mix of disbelief and fury, was burned into my brain. He thought he could erase me. Instead, I erased him with a single piece of paper. Don't forget to subscribe. Update. Wow, I didn't expect this to blow up like it did. I honestly thought I was just ranting into the void about my nightmare stepdad, but apparently a lot of you have lived through your own Craig and Brandon situations. First off, thank you. Reading the comments last night was the first time I felt like I wasn't completely crazy for holding my ground. To answer a couple of the common questions. 1. Yes, the deed is 100% real. My mom was meticulous about paperwork. It's notarized, filed, stamped, airtight. Some of you suggested getting multiple certified copies and a lawyer involved. Already on it. A few folks recommended changing the locks ASAP. That's happening this weekend. 2. Why didn't I show them earlier? Honestly? Spite. Petty, slow burn, wait until he's foaming at the mouth spite. I wanted Craig to commit to his little power fantasy so I could slam it all down at once. The look on his face was worth every second of keeping quiet. 3. What happened after the cops left? That's the fun part. They escorted Craig out onto the porch with all his huffing and puffing, but since his stuff is technically still upstairs, I didn't push for them to physically remove him yet. I figured letting him stew for a night would either break him or make him stupid. Spoiler, it made him stupid. Some of you were saying, careful, people like him don't back down, they escalate. Yeah, you called it. Less than 24 hours later, Craig was already on round 2 of his meltdown. Let's just say broken glass wasn't the last thing he decided to throw. Oh, and shout out to the commenter who said, film everything. A narcissist's worst enemy is their own reflection. Whoever you are, you're basically my guardian angel now. I've got videos, audio, even screenshots of Brandon threatening me in texts. They wanted a war? Fine. But I'm keeping receipts. Some of y'all told me to just move out and let them rot. I get it. That'd be the easy way. But this is my mother's house. Every wall, every corner has her fingerprints. I'm not surrendering it to a drunk bully and his leech of a son. The next chapter's coming fast, and trust me, the real chaos hadn't even started yet. The next morning, I found the kitchen window smashed. Glass everywhere, curtains flapping in the cold air. At first, I thought it was a break-in. Then I saw what they'd left behind. One of Brandon's sneakers sitting on the counter like a calling card. My heart sank. They hadn't left. They were waging a siege. I called the sheriff's office again, reported the vandalism. By the time deputies showed up, Craig and Brandon were long gone. But one of the officers took one look at the sneaker and muttered, "Looks like someone's making this personal. Keep documenting everything." No kidding. That afternoon I came out to my car and froze. Every tire slashed. Home wrecker, spray painted across the hood in dripping red letters. My stomach flipped. Home wrecker. They weren't just angry. They were rewriting the story, making me the villain. I filmed it, took photos from every angle, called the cops again. They filled out another report, shrugged, told me it was hard to prove unless I caught them in the act. That night, I caught them in the act. I was in bed when I heard the garage door creak open. I grabbed my phone, hit record, and crept down the hall. Through the crack of the kitchen door, I saw Brandon holding a crowbar, smashing the shelving I'd built with my mom years ago, splinters flying everywhere. Craig egged him on from the corner, drunk again, slurring, "Take it all down. Tear this place apart until she begs us to leave." Something in me snapped. I stormed in, light flooding the garage. "Caught you," I said, voice shaking with adrenaline. Brandon froze mid-swing. Craig turned, eyes wild. "Turn that off," he barked, lunging toward me. I stumbled back, but I kept the camera up, locked on him. "Touch me, and that's assault. You're done, Craig. Done." He stopped inches from me, chest heaving, fists clenched. For a moment, I thought he was going to swing anyway. Then he saw the little red recording light and pulled back, snarling like an animal. Brandon slammed the crowbar down one more time, splintering the last shelf, and stormed past me. Craig followed, shoving my shoulder hard enough to bruise. "Enjoy your precious deed," he spat. "This isn't over." When the deputies arrived the third time that week, one of them gave me a look I'll never forget. Half pity, half warning. "Ma'am, people like him, they don't stop until someone makes them." I slept with the lights on that night, every creak of the house sounding like footsteps. But the fear had already turned into something sharper. They wanted war? Fine. They'd just handed me the perfect ammunition. I wasn't just going to defend the house anymore. I was going to break them where it hurt. The next day, Craig tried a new tactic: sympathy warfare. I woke up to my phone blowing up with texts from relatives I hadn't spoken to in years. "Why are you kicking your poor stepfather onto the street? He lost his wife. Now you're stealing his home?" Brandon had plastered Facebook with a long sob story about how I stole the house from them, complete with blurry photos of their broken-down car in the driveway, like they were suddenly destitute victims. I didn't even have to defend myself. Neighbors who'd seen everything jumped in on the comments with receipts, videos, screenshots, even the sheriff's reports. The lies backfired almost immediately, turning Craig into a punchline. That same night, though, he escalated again. I came home from work and found the front door wide open. Inside, every drawer had been dumped, clothes strewn across the floor, Mom's photo albums torn apart. And in the middle of the mess, Craig, sitting in Mom's yellow kitchen chair, drunk out of his skull. "You think paper makes you queen?" he slurred, holding up a shard of one of the smashed frames. "You think a deed makes this your house? I built this family. I kept her alive longer than anyone." I raised my phone, already recording. "You broke into my house. You trashed my things. Keep talking, Craig." He staggered up, knocking the chair over. "You're gonna regret this, girl. You can't erase us. You can't erase me." Right then, the deputies walked in. Turns out Mrs. Gomez had called again after hearing the crash of glass. They saw everything. Craig drunk, the house torn apart, me standing there calm with a video running. "Sir, you need to come with us," one deputy said, firm. Craig exploded, screamed, knocked over a lamp, tried to swing at the officer, had to be wrestled into cuffs right there in my mom's kitchen. Brandon came stumbling in mid-arrest, shouting, "You can't do this! This is our house!" only to be shoved back out the door by the second deputy. I stood there shaking, but I didn't look away. For weeks, I'd been on the defensive, just trying to survive. Now, finally, he was the one being dragged out. The next morning, I filed for a restraining order. My videos, the vandalism photos, the neighbor testimony, it all went into the packet. And when I walked out of the courthouse, order in hand, it felt like Mom herself had placed it there. Craig wasn't just humiliated anymore. He was legally barred from coming within 100 yards of the property he'd sworn was his. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with Mom's chipped yellow mug, sipping coffee in silence. The house was a mess, but it was mine again. For the first time since she passed, I felt like she was here. And as for revenge, the sweetest part wasn't the paperwork or even the arrest. It was the look on his face, that wild, broken rage, when the deputies pulled him out of my mother's house in handcuffs. Update 2. So, a lot has happened since my last post. And yes, for those asking, Craig really was dragged out of my kitchen in handcuffs. Some of you joked you'd pay to see that on pay-per-view. Trust me, I'd buy the replay myself just to watch it on loop. The restraining order went through without a hitch. The judge barely looked at Craig's side once they saw the stack of videos, police reports, and neighbor statements I brought in. To whoever commented, "Document everything like you're building a case," I owe you a drink. That advice is what nailed him. But here's the thing. Craig's not done. He's barred from the property, but he's still out there running his mouth. Brandon's been posting cryptic crap online about how blood deserves the house and calling me a snake. A few of his buddies even drove by last night honking and shouting garbage out the window. Immature? Yes. Scary? Also yes. Some of y'all DM'd me wild ideas like, turn the house into a women's shelter just to spite him, or burn it down, collect insurance, and move. Hilarious, but no. This house is my anchor. My mom's anchor. I'm not torching it just because two freeloaders tried to squat here. What really cracked me up were the comments picking apart Craig's Facebook sob story. One of you screenshotted a photo he posted of himself crying in his truck with the caption, "Thrown out by greed." The replies were brutal. My favorite was, "Bro, you got evicted by your stepdaughter and the law. That's not greed, that's justice." I'll admit, seeing strangers roast him online was a weird kind of therapy. I've cried more in the last 2 months than I want to admit, but that night I laughed until my stomach hurt. Anyway, I've reinforced the doors, changed every lock, and got cameras set up. Brandon's still circling, trying to prove he's not beaten yet, but it feels different now. The whole neighborhood's watching him. He can't sneeze without someone hitting record. And me? For the first time since Mom passed, I'm starting to feel like I can breathe in this house again. It's not quiet yet, not safe yet, but it's mine. And when I finally finish cleaning up the wreckage, I'm going to hang both cracked photo frames, Mom at my graduation, Mom on her wedding day, right above the mantel. Cracks and all, proof that we survived. I thought Craig's arrest would end things, but Brandon wasn't ready to let go. With his dad banned from the property, he started circling like a stray dog, revving his car down the street at 2 a.m., leaving beer bottles in the driveway, blasting music outside my window. One night I found the word thief spray-painted across the fence. Not even spelled right, he'd written thef. I almost laughed, but my hands were shaking too hard. The next escalation wasn't funny. I woke up to the smoke alarm blaring, rushed downstairs to find the trash can in the kitchen smoldering. Someone had tossed a lit cigarette through the cracked window. The cameras caught him. Brandon, hood up, sprinting away. That was it. I called the cops again, showed them the footage. They picked him up 2 streets over. But instead of scaring him, the arrest just made him more reckless. The very next day, he showed up outside while deputies were still patrolling. Stood in the middle of the lawn screaming, "This is my house! She stole it!" His voice cracked so hard it echoed off the houses. Neighbors poured out onto their porches, phones up, recording. Mrs. Gomez, bless her, shouted, "It's not your house, idiot! We saw everything!" The whole street started yelling over him. People booing, laughing, telling him to grow up. And then he snapped. Brandon grabbed one of the garden gnomes Mom had kept by the steps and hurled it through the living room window. The glass shattered in front of half the block. Kids were crying, neighbors yelling, deputies sprinting. He didn't get 3 steps before they tackled him on the lawn. Face in the dirt, hands cuffed behind him, screaming nonsense about blood rights and family legacy. Standing on the porch, I didn't feel triumphant. I felt hollow. Watching him thrash in the grass, I realized Brandon wasn't just cruel. He was broken. But broken or not, he wasn't my problem anymore. The deputies asked if I wanted to press charges. I didn't even hesitate. "Yes," I said. "Every single one." That night, the house was quiet for the first time in months. Too quiet. I taped cardboard over the shattered window, swept up the last shards of glass, and sat down with Mom's cracked photo frames. Craig had been dragged out in cuffs. Brandon had been dragged out screaming. And me? I was still standing. But I wasn't done yet. Revenge wasn't just about removing them. It was about making sure they could never twist the story again. Court was the final nail. The charges against Brandon, vandalism, attempted arson, destruction of property, stuck hard. I sat there in the courtroom while the DA rolled out the footage from my cameras. Him lighting the cigarette, him smashing Mom's gnome through the window, him screaming about blood rights, while half the neighborhood jeered. The judge didn't even blink before handing down probation, fines, and mandatory counseling. Craig's case was separate, but just as brutal. Violating the restraining order, public intoxication, resisting arrest, the works. He tried to plead for sympathy, spinning some story about how I'd manipulated his late wife into signing over the house. The judge actually cut him off mid-sentence. "Sir, the deed is clear. This property was never yours." Neighbors who'd testified for me were sitting in the gallery. When the gavel came down, I heard a soft ripple of clapping before the bailiff shut it down. Walking out of that courthouse, I felt taller than I ever had. Not because I'd won, but because Craig and Brandon had lost on every front. They weren't just evicted, They were exposed. Everyone knew who they really were. The sweetest revenge wasn't the arrests or the fines. It was the silence that followed. Brandon stopped posting online. Craig disappeared into whatever cheap apartment would take him. The street felt lighter, like the whole neighborhood had exhaled after holding its breath too long. I spent the next few weeks repairing the house. New windows, fresh paint over the spray tags, shelves rebuilt in the garage. When the work was done, I hung Mom's 2 cracked photo frames right above the mantel. Side by side, glass fractured but whole. Survivors, just like us. On the day the contractors finished the last repair, I brewed coffee in Mom's yellow mug, opened every window, and let the house breathe again. No shouting, no vandalism, no threats, just sunlight spilling across the floorboards she'd polished 100 times. I whispered out loud, "It's ours again, Mom." Craig once stood in this kitchen and said, "This house belongs to me and my son now. You're not welcome here anymore." But now, Craig's gone. Brandon's gone. And I'm still here. The house belongs to me. Always did. Always will.